Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMZ, Diwan-e-Ghalib, Meri Zubani. To all our returning viewers, we are very happy you could join us again. And to the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, if you were with me in the previous episode, you know that we finished Ghazal 33 from Diwan-e-Ghalib last time. What that means is today we get to start a new Ghazal, Ghazal 34 from Diwan-e-Ghalib. True to the tradition at DGMZ, for the first episode of the Ghazal, I will narrate the entire Ghazal for you. Going forward, I will only be narrating the couplets that we are going to pick up in the episodes. So, allow me to narrate Ghazal 34 from Diwan-e-Ghalib. Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin Nahin Be-Kaar Baagh, यान जादा भी फतीला है लाले के दाग का। बे-mai किसे है ताaqat-e-Ashob-e-Aagaahi, खींचा है Ijz-e-Hausla ने खत आयाग का। बुलबुल के कारोबार पे हैं खंदा-haa-e-Gul, कहते हैं जिसको इश्क खलल है दिमाग का। ताज़ा नहीं है नशा-ए-फिक्र-ए-सुखन मुझे, तिरयाकी-ए-क़दीम हूँ दूद-ए-चरागh का। 100 बार बंदे-इश्क से आज़ाद हम हुए, पर क्या करें कि दिल ही अदू है फराग का। Be-Khuun-e-Dil है चश्मे मौज-ए-निगाह गुबार, ये mai-Kada खराब है मैं के सुराग का। Baagh-e-Shagufta तेरा Bisaat-e-Nashaat-e-Dil, Abr-e-Bahaar Khum-kada किसके दिमाग का। So, that is Ghazal 34 from Diwan-e-Ghalib. Today, we are going to pick the Matla of the Ghazal, the first couplet. So, let's get on with it. All right, just getting settled here. Okay, first couplet. Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin Nahin Be-Kaar Baagh का, यान जादा भी फतीला है लाले के दाग का। Let's start with a quick approximate translation. First line, Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin Nahin Be-Kaar Baagh ka. Not even one particle or speck of earth is unused or left useless in the garden. Second line, Yaan Jaada bhi Fatiila hai Laale ke Daagh ka. Here, even the garden paths serve as the wick to light up the scars of the tulips. So, that is a quick approximate translation, a very vivid visual couplet. So, let's start picking our keywords, quite a few today. First, yak. Yak is simple, one. इस पे मीर तकी मीर का एक शेर, आतिश बुलंद दिल की ना थी वरना ए कलीम, यक शोला बर के खिरमन सद कोहे तूर था. Complex. The approximate translation is the fire, the flame from the heart was not high enough, otherwise Moses, the lightning that my heart emitted was equivalent to 100 Tur mountains. And here, if you know the story, Moses met God on Mountain Tur and witnessed a fire like he had seen never before. So Mir Taki Mir says that somehow the flame that emitted from my heart was not high enough, otherwise it did have the intensity of 100 fires that Moses saw on Mountain Tur. So that is Yak. Moving on to Zarra. Zarra is always used to describe a very small particle of something, a small portion of something, a small piece of something, something very integral, almost at atomic level, right? इस पे असरूल हक मजाज का ये शेर, तेरे जलवों में घिर गया आखिर जर्रे को आफताब होना था. The approximate translation is, it ultimately got encaptured in your majesty, in your glory, in your beauty, because this particle was destined to be the sun. Moving on to the next keyword, Zameen. Now, this is a common word. We use it even in our local colloquial language. It translates to earth, ground. Sometimes metaphorically it can also be referred to for country, but otherwise usually earth, ground, land. इस पे अल्लामा इकबाल का ये शेर, चांद कहता था नहीं अहले ज़मीं है कोई, कहकशा कहती थी पोशीदा यहीं है कोई. Beautiful couplet, right? The approximate translation is, the moon insisted that there are no people on earth, but the galaxy, the Milky Way, kept saying that no, they are somewhere here, hidden, concealed. Moving on to the next word, Yaan. Yaan is here. The opposite of it is Va, which is there. इस पे अकबर अलाहाबादी का एक शेर, वा दिल में कि सदमे दो, या जी में कि सब सह लो, उनका भी अजब दिल है, मेरा भी अजब जी है. The approximate translation is, there the objective is that torture the heart. Here the heart says bear everything. They have a very unique type of heart and I have a very unique type of heart. Moving on to the next word, Jaada. Actually Jaada. That translates to a road, a route, a pathway, right? A track on which you will travel. इस पे साहिर लुधियानवी का ये शेर, जो तुम्हें जादा मंजिल का पता देता है, अपनी पेशानी पर वो नक्शे कदम लेके चलो. Again, beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, the one that will guide you on the path to your destination, that imprint of foot you should carry on your forehead. And as you know, in our culture, Indian culture, there is this tradition, right, to bow down and touch your head to the feet of whoever you respect, whoever you honor, right? So that probably is the custom that is playing in the background of that couplet. All right, moving on to the next keyword, Fatiila. Fatiila is some kind of wick, some kind of fuse, right? But I'm not talking about the modern fuse which we have in bombs, etc. This is usually a very simple cotton wick which would help get the fuel to whatever needs to be burnt. इस पे मीर तकी मीर का ये शेर, मिले थे मीर से हम कल किनारे दरिया पर, फतीला मुंह वो जिगर सोखता है जैसे अतीत. It is such a nice visual couplet. So the approximate translation is, yesterday we met Mir at the banks of the river. Fatiila muh, his hair seemed like a wick. Jigar sokhta, and the heart was like a burning fire. And he looked like this unique, strange wanderer or pilgrim whose hair was serving as a wick and the heart was burning furiously. This is Mir's description of himself. असद बदायूं का ये शेर, हम उस दयार में जिंदा हैं जिसके सारे लोग कभी फतीला कभी लबलबी बनाते हैं. So the approximate translation is, I am alive in a town where all its people are either creating wicks or are creating triggers for pistols. Just the volatile nature, right, of the place the poet is in, that there are only two things people are making and everybody is making them. Either they are making a wick to burn something or they are making triggers to shoot someone. Alright, so that takes care of Fatiila. Moving on to Laale. Laale is, as you can note the Lal word in it, right? So Laale is usually used to describe the tulip flower. इस पे अल्लामा इकबाल का ये शेर, उठाए कुछ वरक लाले ने, कुछ नरगिस ने, कुछ गुल ने, चमन में हर तरफ बिखरी हुई है दास्तां मेरी. Beautiful couplet. So the approximate translation is, the leaves, the pages from my book. And of course, Allama Iqbal, right, one of the most renowned poets. So the pages from my poetry, some were picked by the tulips, some were picked by the narcissus flower, and some were picked by the rose. And when I say picked, I mean some were narrated, right? Some were depicted in the tulips, some in the narcissus flowers, and some in the roses. Throughout the garden, it seemed as if my story had spread around. All the flowers picked up different pages from my story and were narrating it in their own way. Beautiful couplet, very closely tied to our couplet today. And then this last one, क्यों खटकती है ज़माने को किसी की लग़्ज़िश, दाग लाले में नहीं या मैं तबान में नहीं. Again, a lovely couplet. Lagzish means any kind of error, any kind of mistake made by someone. So the approximate translation is, why does this world become so worked up when someone makes a mistake, when someone makes an error? क्यों खटकती है ज़माने को किसी की लग़्ज़िश, दाग लाले में नहीं, don't we have scars in the tulip, या मैं तबा में नहीं, or don't we have scars in a full bright moon? Everybody has a scar. Everybody bears a scar of their mistake. So why do these worldly people make such a big deal when someone makes an error, when someone makes a mistake? Beautiful, very inspirational couplet. All right. That takes care of all the key words. Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin, Yaan, Jaada, Fatiila, Laale. Daagh, as we all know, is scar. Okay, first line. Let's start getting into our impression. Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin Nahin Be-Kaar Baagh. Not even one particle or speck of earth is unused or left useless in the garden. It's a simple, straightforward line by Ghalib on surface. Very factual, right? Each and every spots even as small as a particle, zarra, right, are used up in the garden. Ghalib here is painting the picture of a flourishing, blooming, continuously expanding and growing garden. Simply put, a garden that is in the prime of spring. Such is the blooming and growing that little to no space seems to be left unfilled or unused. Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin, one particle of earth, Nahin Be-Kaar, is not unused Baagh ka, of the garden. A blooming garden is a sight of beauty and color for every eye, as if time itself stops to see the unimaginable creativity and artistry of God. Artists, especially visual ones like the painters, love flowers as their muse. Some of the most famous painters have some of their most famous works focused on flowers and gardens. Be it Van Gogh, Claude Monet, or Henri Matisse. Claude Monet, his quote, "I must have flowers, always and always." Henri Matisse, quote, "They are always flowers for those who want to see them." Vincent van Gogh, quote, "How right it is to love flowers and the greenery of pines and ivy and hawthorn hedges. They have been with us from the very beginning." Several authors and poets too have found inspiration in flowers to illustrate emotions of love and beauty. Victor Hugo, "Life is the flower for which love is the honey." Stephanie Skene, "Flowers don't tell, they show." Ralph Waldo Emerson, "The earth laughs in flowers." And then again Victor Hugo, "If people did not love one another, I really don't see what use there would be in having any spring." So as you can see, art celebrates gardens and flowers and spring, right? The lover of Urdu poetry is no different. Spring hits him with its beauty and magnificence in a unique way too. There indeed exists a very specific, unique dynamic between the lover in Urdu poetry and spring. Spring for the lover in Urdu poetry usually symbolizes intense nostalgia associated with the beloved and the unrequited love he has for her. The garden converses with the lover in a unique language, a language that goes deeper than just the visible beauty and color, a language that talks about the pain and anguish that lies expertly camouflaged under all the visible, vibrant beauty and color. अल्लामा इकबाल का ये शेर, "फिर चरागे लाला से रोशन हुए कोहो दामन, मुझको फिर नगमों पे उकसाने लगा मुर्गे चमन." So the approximate translation is, once again, thanks to the lamps of the tulip flowers, the tall mountains and the small hills are equally lit up. And once again, this bird of the garden, bulbul, right, has started enticing me to write poetry. मिर्ज़ा गालिब का ये शेर, "फिर जिगर खोदने लगा नाखून, आमदे फसले लालाकारी है." One of his famous couplets. Approximate translation is, once again, my heart is starting to get lacerated by my own nails. I am clawing at my own heart because once again the garden is full of blooming tulips. It's just the nostalgia, right? How it hits the lover. A garden in bloom, a garden in the full swing of spring, uses its beauty to freshen up the wounds in the lover's heart, making these wounds bloom up once again. We always say at DGMZ, Ghalib has a unique, magical combination of two senses. Number one, very astute sense of observation. Number two, off the charts sense of imagination. And this couplet will serve as a great example where he leverages both these senses. In this first line, Ghalib urges us to look at this blooming, flourishing garden from the eyes of the lover. So, let's start seeing what is this picture that is emerging in the first line. In some corner, hypothetically speaking, of a flourishing garden is seated Ghalib, the lover, and as far as his eyes can see, there is blooming spring. Such is the thickness of flowers and greenery that it seems there is not even a grain or speck of ground that's left empty or unused. Spring has taken over the garden completely. So that takes care of the first line, Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin Nahin Be-Kaar Baagh. Let's move on to the second line. Yaan Jaada bhi Fatiila hai Laale ke Daagh ka. Here even the garden paths are in service, acting like wicks to light up the wounds of the tulips, scars of the tulips. Let's begin with this statement. Second line is marvelous, just marvelous. Now, there are three concepts that we need to be familiar with to enjoy this second line. So let's quickly cover up those concepts. First one is Jaada. Like we said, Jaada translates to pathways, and in today's couplet, specifically referring to garden pathways. We all know, no matter how flourishing the garden is, it will always have these pre-defined, pre-constructed pathways which will be made of either stones or bricks or concrete. The idea is create a safe route, create a safe path on which we can walk without harming or trampling any flora or greenery or whatever is in the garden. So Jaada here is these garden pathways that are constructed in this garden Ghalib is describing, on which you can walk. Second concept is Fatiila. Like we said, Fatiila translates to a wick. This is an Arabic word which is also used in Urdu and Hindi and usually means a wick, a match, or a fuse. The term derives from the Arabic root fatil, which means twisted. Cotton wicks in olden times were indeed twisted, braided, long structures that held the flame of a candle or oil lamp. These wicks worked by capillary action, conveying or wicking as we call it, the fuel to the flame. When the liquid fuel, which would either be melted candle wax or some kind of oil, would reach the flame, it would vaporize and combust. In other words, the wick was what totally wrong. Let me try that again. In other words, the wick is what brings the liquefied fuel up into the flame to burn. The candle wick quality, in fact, is what will decide how the candle burns or how the lamp burns. The quality of the wick decides how nice, bright, and sustainable flame you will have, right? So that is Fatiila, second concept. Fatiila is the lifeline to any oil lamp. Let's move on to the third and the last concept, Laale ke Daagh. Laale tulip, Daagh scars. Scars of the tulip. Ghalib here describes for us, dear viewers, the tulip flower in vivid detail. We have to keep in mind that back in Ghalib's days, tulip flowers were only found in their original predominant color, which is red. These wild tulips were the ancestors of the modern cultivated tulips, which come in every possible color, and were admired by the Turks for their vibrant color in the harsh environment of the Tain Shan mountains, and I might be pronouncing that wrong. Now, A blooming tulip flower has a very peculiar, darkened, radiating pattern at its center. The dark center of a tulip is composed of its pistil, which is the female reproductive organs, and the bases of stamens, which is the male reproductive organs. Even the petals that surround the pistil and stamen have this dark stain of pigment at the base, and this all together, this whole structure contributes to that overall dark appearance at the center of the flower. So what Ghalib is detailing for us is this red blooming tulip with its dark radiating pattern in the center. Laale ke Daagh. This is what he's referring to. Okay, so all three concepts out of the way, Jaada, Fatiila and Laale ke Daagh. Let's start getting into the DGMZ impression of this second line. Now in the first line we saw Ghalib the lover looks over this blooming, flourishing garden and does not find even a single speck of ground that is left unused. In the second line, we will see Ghalib the lover join forces with Ghalib the poet to reinforce the claim of the first line, which is Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin Nahin Be-Kaar Baagh. Ghalib in the second line says, even these garden pathways, Jaada, which on surface might look empty, unused, unfilled, without any greenery and flowers, are actually part of the bloom, part of the flower. And this is where that totally illogical claim, right? Like we said, per the concept, garden pathways will not have anything on them. They will not have any flowers, they will not have any grass. They are created as these neutral territory, right? Where you will not have anything growing, because then you can walk on them. But Ghalib says that, okay, fine, though on surface it might look that nothing is growing on these pathways, though on surface they might look like being unused, unfilled with flowers, but trust me, they are not. They are part of the bloom. And how? That is even more strange a logic that we will come to. But these garden pathways threading through the garden, according to Ghalib, are actually wicks, Fatiila. ये जो जादा है, ये फतीला है that are keeping the tulips fueled up to shine bright like lit up oil lamps. Oof, the imagination, right? Mind-blowing. Everybody will see concrete pathways in the garden. Ghalib sees wicks, cotton wicks running through the garden, which are going and fueling these flowers, making them bloom. Now, when a lover in Urdu poetry gazes at these red tulips, he does not only just see pretty red blooming flowers. What he sees is red flaming flowers on fire. And at the center of these flaming flowers, he sees the darkened scars of burning. The lover also sees how these tulips are being continuously fueled by the wicks created by the garden pathways that are keeping these flowers burning brightly. Now, just imagination, right? And using such common things, wick, flowers, pathways, garden, I mean, you will relate to everything. And suddenly Ghalib has painted a picture for you where there is this whole fuel line, multiple fuel lines running in a garden in terms of these cotton wicks. and they are going and connecting to the flowers and fueling the flowers to burn them up brightly. And all that burning is leaving dark scars in the heart of the flowers, in the center of the flowers. अल्लामा इकबाल का ये शेर, ज़मीरे लाला में रोशन चरागे आरजू कर दे, चमन के जर्रे जर्रे को शहीद जुस्तजू कर दे. Approximate translation is, in the conscience of the tulips, go and light up the lamp of your desire, and in each and every particle of the garden, go and sacrifice each and every particle of the garden to your desire. Lover, go and do this. Like I said, the lover in Urdu poetry and the garden in its bloom share a very unique dynamic. Once this blooming and burning will be over, the dark scars in the flowers will bear testament to what happened. In this share, Ghalib beautifully captures how the lover sees his wounds, his scars reflect in the blossoming tulips. This share from Ghalib beautifully captures how the lover relates to the blooming flowers. सब कहाँ कुछ लाला ओ गुल में नुमाया हो गई, खाक में क्या सूरतें होंगी कि पिन्हा हो गई. The approximate translation is, how could all of them, therefore not all of them manifested, but some of them did manifest in the tulips and roses. Otherwise, rest of them just got mixed and hid in the dust. Now, what is he talking about? In all probability, the desires, the wishes, the laments, the sighs. It can be anything from the lover. But Ghalib in this couplet says, most of it went unheard, unseen. There were a few that manifested via the tulips and the roses. Some of my desires, some of my laments, some of my unfulfilled wishes did manifest in the roses and in the tulips, but otherwise the rest of them just got mixed in the dust and got hidden in the dust. So that takes care of that vividly visual second line, Ya Jaada bhi Fatiila hai Laale ke Daagh ka. Here even the garden paths are serving as a wick to carry fuel to the burning, flaming tulips and their scarred center. Now, as always, let's take a step back and look at the couplet in totality. Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin Nahin Be-Kaar Baagh ka, Ya Jaada bhi Fatiila hai Laale ke Daagh ka. Ghalib paints a vivid picture of a blooming garden for us, but specifically from the perspective of the lover, who is in unrequited love with the beloved. Allama Iqbal ka ye sher, Maqam-e parvarish aho lala hai ye chaman. Maqam-e parvarish aho lala hai ye chaman, na saire gul ke liye hai, na aashiyan ke liye. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, it is meant to be the destination, the place for nourishing laments and tulips. Laments of the lover and the tulip flowers. It is not meant for Saire-Gul. It is not meant to wander in and have a stroll in, and neither is it meant for Ashiyan. Neither is it meant for the nest. Allama Iqbal says, the garden only blooms for two things. The garden is only in existence for two things. Number one, for the lover to sit in it and lament, and number two, for the tulips to bloom. The beauty of the garden will always remind the lover of primarily two things: the beauty of the beloved and the unrequited love he has for her. Therefore, in anything and everything perceived by the lover in this garden, these two aspects will coexist. So therefore, on one hand, he will see a garden full and flourishing, that not even a speck of ground is left empty, with flaming, red, beautiful blossoming tulips. But in parallel, on the other hand, he will simultaneously also see the garden pathways serving as wicks, carrying fuel to burn the blooming red tulips and leaving behind dark scars in the heart of each tulip. Ghalib the lover draws a parallel between the heart of the lover and the tulip flower. The lover's heart too was once a gushing, bright red heart filled with love, passion, and desire for the beloved. But simultaneously, the fire of unrequited love and separation burns this heart, scarring and darkening it beyond repair. Though everyone looking at these tulips sees blooming bright red flowers with a beautiful dark center, the lover sees beyond that. The lover sees what this burning, flaming bloom has cost the flower, how it has burned up the flower and left behind dark scars as testaments to the burning. And just like the tulip displays proudly its scars as part of its beautiful bloom, so does the lover cherish the scars on his heart of unrequited love. Both have been burnt in love and both have scars to show for it. अल्लामा इकबाल का ये शेर, चमन में लाला दिखाता फिरता है दाग अपना कली कली को, ये जानता है कि इस दिखावे से दिल जलों में शुमार होगा. Beautiful couplet, so close to our theme, right? So the approximate translation is, the tulip, the bloomed tulip in the garden goes to every bud and shows his burnt heart, shows the darkened center at its heart. Because the tulip knows, if he does this, dikhave, right? If he shows this darkened heart, he will be then included in that creme de la creme group of dil jale, people who get their heart burnt in love. So, exact parallel that we were also talking about, right? That the tulip takes pride in his burnt center, scarred, darkened center, just like the lover takes pride in his scarred, burnt, darkened heart. Now, before we close the impression, we wanted to highlight two things to you. Number one, Daagh in this verse need not necessarily be a scar from burning. It could very well be a scar from wounding. Laale ke Daagh ka, right? The wounding aspect did not pass our DGMZ test, which means that it should be understood by the brain and it should go without any problem deep into your heart, right? So what we did, we took what spoke to us and based the entire impression on the assumption that these scars were based on burning or were a result of burning. Wounding still remains a viable option, and many people who have translated this have used that. The second thing that we wanted to highlight was that this concept of the blooming of flower being perceived by everyone as a joyous thing for the flower, but being perceived by the lover as a heart-wrenching process for the flower. This is one of its kind theme. It's a very unique theme, and I would highly encourage you to access the episode for Ghazal 26, episode 7. The Ghazal is Garna Andohe Shabe Furqat, uska part 7. We will put it in the end screen, but go through it because that episode talks about another additional, new perspective to this heart-wrenching process of blooming that a flower undergoes, which is in high contrast to the usual perception that, oh, a blooming flower is a smiling flower, right? But Urdu poetry takes a very different stance on it. So one is this that we discussed today, and the other one is in this Ghazal 26 part 7. All right. So now that brings us to the end of our impression for Yak-Zarra-e-Zamiin Nahin Be-Kaar Baagh Ka, Yahan Jaada bhi Fatiila hai Laale ke Daagh ka. I hope you enjoyed the impression. As always, we will be very keen to read your comments and feedback. Now, for the new viewers, a strong recommendation to access the episode titled Introduction to DGMZ, because it will give you a good insight into the motivation and inspiration behind the podcast. For our regular viewers, whenever you have time, go to the homepage of the channel, surf through all the playlists we create there, and then you can pick an episode that appeals to you. If you haven't joined us on the Facebook page, join us on the DGMZ Facebook page. We post regularly there and would be keen to have you there interact with us. Now, allow me to go ahead and close this episode by sending a lot of love and a lot of light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.